been at Central Methodist the past 3 years. I've been fortunate to have been at good places, winning programs, and we just try to keep the tradition going here.
Great. Coach Reid, do you want to go ahead?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm having some internet issues. But yeah, my name is Reid Walling, assistant coach at Kaiser University in West Palm Beach, Florida. Don't have a really long journey to talk about. I've been at Kaiser for all 5 years that I've been a college coach. But a little background, I went to the University of Tennessee, actually grew up in Knoxville. So I was fortunate enough, like with the relationships that I had, to kind of grow up in and around the Lady Vol family. Worked Coach Summit's camps all growing up in the summer. Got done playing in high school, went to UT, did some practice player stuff, also coached at my middle school for the boys while I was at UT, and then AAU on the girls' side. So kind of knew that I wanted to be a coach at that point. Didn't really know what level or anything like that. Kind of thought that I was going to be a high school boys coach. That was kind of my vision. And then after I graduated, I kind of got lucky. One of my friends ran into a former Lady Vol that we both knew, and she was the head coach at Northwood University at the time down in Florida. She was looking for a GA. So I hopped on that opportunity. I knew nothing about the NAIA or Northwood at the time. All that I knew about Northwood was that it was in West Palm Beach, which seemed pretty cool for a 23-year-old at the time. So then I did a little research and saw that Rolly Massimino was the head coach for the men's side. So, Coach Mass is a legend and was a great man. So that's all I needed. So I went down there and did a year as a GA. Then my head coach at that time left after a season and took an assistant job somewhere else. So I was kind of in limbo, didn't know exactly what was next for me. But I was still finishing up my master's and hanging around the athletic department. And Northwood was actually transitioning into Kaiser University at that time. And they hired a new coach, Pam Oswald, and I got lucky again. She interviewed me for her full-time assistant job. And, I've spent the last 5 years now as her assistant. So, one of the things that I think is awesome about the NAIA level is that, for me and our coaching staff, it's just me and Joe. So get to get a lot of hands-on experience in every aspect of the program. So, we think of coaching as, the recruiting, the player development, the on-court, whether it's practice or games, scouting, and all that stuff's great. And I love it. But, and especially if you have a good coach who's going to mentor you and everything like that, I love the NAIA level because you get to get your hands on everything else in the program, whether it's, video coordinating, somebody's got to break down the film and put edits together on Synergy, and we use Just Play as well, or the basketball operations side of things. So booking hotels and making itineraries, planning for pregame and postgame meals, doing some laundry, all those things that you get to do hands-on experience that you might not get to do role at the Division I level. That's something that I think is super beneficial about the NAIA level. And obviously you got to have a great head coach like I do, who's going to give you more and more responsibilities and roles as you go on and help you grow.
Great. Coach Ernest, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Ashton and Connor, for putting this on and allowing us to be a part of this. Truly grateful to be here and hopefully learn from others on the panel as well as guys in attendance. So I've been coaching, I think 18 years total. I started out really just doing like film and being a cameraman. That was a position back then in like 1998 for Bill Van Gundy at Genesee Community College. That's where I went to JUCO. It's Western New York, right outside of like, right between Buffalo and Rochester, New York. And BVG had some great teams there, but he was up in age by the time I got there and didn't stay very long. Actually didn't get to finish that season. And a guy named Michael Von Schiller took over, and he had a part assistant who had a full-time job. And so I was like an intern / manager. And that's where, you know, I got to do all those great things that Coach was just talking about, the laundry and, you know, keeping track of meal money and all sorts of stuff. And it was a great opportunity for me at such a young age to start learning about what JUCO was like. The year before I graduated, we had been a part of the best team in the school's history. We went to the national tournament in Dansville, Illinois, and finished, I want to say 6th, I think, in the country. That was a tremendous experience. And then from there, I went to SUNY Institute of Technology, which is in Utica, New York. That's about 30 miles east of Syracuse, where I was a student assistant for a couple different coaches. We had some turnover there, but all great men, all great coaches, and I learned a ton from them. The last guy I worked for there was Tom Murphy, who's on the staff at Northeastern. He was a great Division III head coach in his own right, winning over 300 plus games or something like that. And he's someone that I still get to keep in touch with to this day. From there, I moved to Arizona and became a head coach at the high school varsity level. I was a head coach for 8 years total at 2 different schools. One school was on a native reservation in Scottsdale, Arizona. The other school was a public 2A charter school in Ahwatukee / Phoenix. So night and day situations in terms of, you know, student population and the different things that, you know, I had to help try and help those kids navigate through. From there, I got to a great opportunity to work at Mesa Community College in Arizona. I heard Coach Remy talking about Western were, you know, big time program that we tried to compete with on the men's side as well. And so I was at Mesa for 5 years as an assistant, my last 2 as the recruiting coordinator as well. And that's where I met my current head coach, Corey Hoff, who I'm here now at Graceland. Brief pit stop at Albany State University, which was NCAA D2 last year. And that we ended up finishing in the Final Four in the SIAC, which was a great season. It's the best season that they've had in over a decade, I believe. And that led me to this opportunity here with Coach Hoff at Graceland. I've known him for 8+ years, and it really goes to show what it can do for your career to have genuine relationships, so that you you be a part of a staff with people you trust and believe in and enjoy working with.
Great. Coach Warren, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, first off, thanks, Ashton, for having me on, and you and Connor for setting this up. I think this is great for our level and to grow the game. I'll start. This is going to be my 11th year of coaching. I started right when I was out of high school. Once I finished up my senior year of high school, I had a pretty good idea. I wanted to stay with basketball. I was an okay player, so I knew I wasn't going to be playing. But I went straight into AAU. I've worked at almost every level, which is, it doesn't seem like that going through it, but when I put some notes together, it's kind of amazing that it's been a little bit of everything, which I think is helped prepare me for what I do now. Did AAU at 19 years old. I was the head JV and high school coach, JV and freshman coach at my alma mater, Jensen Beach High School in Jensen Beach, Florida, which is in the South Florida area, kind of down by Reid's Way, by Kaiser. Did that for a year. It doesn't seem like much at the time, but I think that gave me the confidence that I was going in the right direction, whether I could do this coaching thing. We had a really good team. I had good players, but we had some success. So I think at an early age, it bred some confidence. And probably the biggest thing for me was it bred confidence in my mom and dad that they weren't wasting their time me doing this and sort of chasing maybe a pipe dream they might have thought. I went from there to Indian River State College, JUCO, Division I JUCO in Florida, and worked for a man by the name of Joe Sanchez, who is an absolute great basketball coach, one of my longest mentors, has coached women's and men's. He was the head coach at Navy, Wake Forest, and UCF on the women's side, won almost 600 games. I'm now at Warner, where he was an assistant at Warner, and that'll all tie in at the end on how I got the job there. But my year there, we went to the Region 8 the state tournament, won 20 games, had 10 guys move on to 4 years. So we had a really, really good team. And Coach Sanchez was a great mentor, and he's just a basketball coach. He's not a men's coach, not a women's coach, just coaches basketball. Then I went on and got my bachelor's degree and was a student manager at the University of North Florida. One of my Wolfpack mates that was a manager as well, Zach Friesman's on this call. And that sort of speaks to what we had at UNF. It was a bond with the staff, with the players, with each other as managers, with the community. And the biggest thing I took away from there was the servant leadership from Coach Matthew Driscoll, who's the head coach. If you've not heard him talk, don't know a whole lot about him, he's absolutely as good as it gets. I just watched him on the NABC at 5 o'clock today again. And he's an unbelievable human being, probably a better human being than he is coaching. He's a pretty darn good coach. The other two things that were big takeaways from that experience were not all places are the same. Not all staffs are the same. Those guys poured into us. They cared about us. They loved us. They still do to this day. They'll do anything to help us. And Coach Driscoll is a master at investing in people and in injured players. So he has deep relationships with them. He has deep relationships with the managers, his staff, all the way through. The janitorial people will walk through the gym at our 5 a.m. session, and he knows them by name. And so I took a lot away from that, even though it was sort of the least of basketball roles in my journey. It was probably one of the more influential in my path. I went back to Indian River for another season to do my internship as I was graduating from North Florida, and served as an assistant again there for Coach Sanchez. And then I sort of had to figure out what I wanted to do. I had graduated. There weren't any openings at North Florida. I had to find out what I was going to do. So I went to a place called Combine Academy in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's post-grad, which is a very, very interesting level. It taught me how to do a lot of different things. It was probably 30% basketball and 70% babysitting, which was very, very humbling. And so I had my year up there in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then I branched off and I was the general manager of Combine Academy Orlando, which was the most trying year in my path because I spent most of my time buying groceries, dealing with apartment leases, collecting money from parents, planning activities, planning practice, planning games, and really dealing with entitled kids. We had a few good ones. The other guys, it sort of showed why they had no options, and they wouldn't believe us. They wouldn't believe us. So that was a trying time and a crossroads on where I wanted to go. I felt like I had gotten out of college basketball, so I hadn't met as many people in the last year and a half, 2 years during that period. Considered getting out of basketball. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Wasn't sure that this is what I wanted to do. Or that I was able to do it, I guess I should say. I knew I wanted to coach basketball and be in basketball, but wasn't sure I was going to have those options. So I finally returned a random phone call from my former boss, Coach Sanchez. He was an assistant at Warner University at the time. I had interviewed at a couple different NAIAs in the state, didn't know much about the level, went to Weber International, which is in our league, went to St. Thomas, which was in our league. And they didn't have a whole lot to offer, but I was sort of going to do whatever I had to do, volunteer. So I went up to Warner, had never heard of it before. Coincidentally, had sat in the same room with my now boss, Coach Sean Hanrahan, at UNF at a coach's clinic. Didn't know it until looking back. So I went up there, met with him. He offered me a GA position. I took it. I was lucky enough to have some North Florida guys call on my behalf. Coach Sanchez was in my corner, so he trusted me. He didn't know anything about it. He took a chance on me, brought me into Coach JV. I'll never forget, we were 2 days into summer camp. We have like a kid camp at Warner in the summer that's run through Nike. And in his office on Tuesday night, starts on Monday, Tuesday night, I can't have you coach JV. You're going to be full-time with the varsity. I need you to do all this. I guess in, I don't know, 24 hours, I had proved to him what I could do, or really showed him glimpses of what I could do. And the rest is so-called history. Going into year 4, we've had 3 straight 20-win seasons since I've been there, 6 straight for Coach Han, and he's won 20 games, 10 out of 14 years. This is entering year 15 for him, which I give him a hard time about all the time because he's getting old. We won a regular season title last year, which was the first time in his tenure. Like Reid said, he's been coaching against Raleigh Massimino, Steve Ritter, and Embry-Riddle. It's an unbelievable league, unbelievable level. I mean, we got Hall of Fame coaches in the league. And then just this past month, I was promoted to associate head coach, which was an incredible honor, and something that was I don't take for granted, and I really appreciate. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my whole path is possible, because my mom and dad have supported me through this whole thing. But that's my story.
Awesome. The first question we'll have for all of you is, how do you go about balancing and prioritizing your responsibilities and your schedule when it's just you and one other person? And if you could kind of talk about how you kind of figured out the most effective way to do that.
I can go ahead first if you don't mind. One thing Coach Han and I talk about all the time is what affects winning. So that's how we prioritize it, because 99% of the time it is him and I. We don't really have any managers. Our other assistant works in the NBA. He pretty much does camps full time. He's there for games and sometimes for practice, and brings a wealth of knowledge, but he's just not there on a day-to-day basis because this isn't his full-time job. So we talk about what affects winning. Maybe that day it's player development. Maybe that day it's making sure our guys' schedules are correct. Maybe that day it's watching our next opponent, and it varies. Maybe that day it's for me to do laundry for an hour. I mean, that we just prioritize. That's what he always says is what affects winning, what can help us win the next game. It's kind of how we prioritize it. Maybe we have to answer phone calls a little bit later. Maybe we have to, if there's something we can put off for 12 hours, maybe we put it off if there's something more important to do. So I guess that would be our Warner University answer.
At
Yeah, I can go
Graceland,
next.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Coach Dan. Go ahead.
Appreciate it. I was going to say at Graceland, our head coach, he empowers us pretty well. He's fairly hands-off, tries to delegate what is tasked to our strengths. And so, for instance, part of the season this year, I'm responsible for helping with the breakdown of our scouts and things of that nature. The assistant coach, AJ Gordon, he was our recruiting coordinator and did, he and I broke down the scouts where he focused on the best. I focused on various aspects of player personnel stuff. And coach had his input as well. And we had another assistant that focused on certain game keys. We also have a student assistant. So we have, for a school of our size, we had a pretty solid staff where we got to be able to focus on very specific things, as well as be there for each other to be a support system if we needed help with other tasks and things like that, or what have you, and managing these announced day-to-day stuff for our program. So with our head coach being able to kind of like, hey, this is what we need, go ahead and do it. That that not having that micromanagement was great, and something that I came to have to make sure that I really focus on for myself first, because I am a person that deals more with guidelines and due dates and things like that to really lock in on things. Creating a schedule and trying to stick to it, it's something that I've started to really add to my coaching development as well. But within our staff, we have guys that we can lean on that may have strengths that are our weaknesses and vice versa. And it's proven to be something that is going to continue to propel us, I think, within our program.
Yeah, so for us and for me personally, I'm fortunate. My head coach is very organized. That's just one of her things. So, after you're with somebody like that for 5 years, there's just a certain level of continuity, and as your responsibilities grow, I know that I'm in charge of scheduling and in charge of the defense and keeping up with our recruiting database, things like that. But at the beginning, for me, it was making sure we had those weekly, if not daily meetings where I just want to know, what exactly are my roles and responsibilities so that then I can be organized, because coming out as a 24-year-old, I was not like this at the beginning. So I needed to have a to-do list. I needed a to-do list and to know what she's prioritizing, because at the end of the day, whatever she's prioritizing has to be my priority to get what she needs done first.
I think to piggyback off all those coaches, I think they touched on a lot of stuff. But like Coach Reid just said there, for me coming in when I first got here, my first year, I was basically brought in just to recruit. I have a background in recruiting, so that was basically my job. And then as the years went on and going into my fourth year, I'm kind of in charge almost of everything. Our head coach here, Coach Davis, handles a lot of the scheduling and those kind of behind the scenes stuff. But as far as scheduling and recruiting players, I know whatever I'm doing, he's already entrusted me to do it. So, for a lot of times I don't even have to get an okay from him, because that's kind of the continuity that we already have. And I already know it's okay, so a lot of times I may go do something and it gets done. I think a lot of times for us assistant coaches, it's, I have a head coach that doesn't like when people wait for him to tell you to go do something, and after you've been with somebody so long, you kind of already know them coming in and what, they're going to want needed done and how to go about and do it. And one thing I say for head coaches, they like an assistant that gets the job done without them thinking. Makes their job easier because it's already hard on their plate.
Great. The next question is, how do you manage in-game responsibilities? Do you do more charting or help with adjustments? Just kind of talk about your responsibility during the game.
I could start here. I'm the head assistant here with Coach Davis. On our staff, we have another assistant, as well as we're fortunate to have a GA. So, our GA is kind of full-time. So it's nice when you have other coaches. But for us, we kind of go into a game, in-game adjustments, I offer those out a lot, but at the same time, any of us can. And, as head coaches, sometimes we give ideas and they may look at us and, say, not right now, but that doesn't stop you from the next idea. And our other coaches, they're in charge of, we have a touches list. So whether it's a steal, deflection, charge, taking charges and those kind of things. So anytime you can deflect the pass or just doing the little things that may not be points and rebounds, we keep track of those here. And after the game or at halftime, we definitely go in and, we count those up and see how many touches. Because usually when we're in a high number, that means we're getting a lot of steals and our defense is flying and we're converting into easy offense. So we get a lot of freedom here with our head coach, and we try to use it during the games. And he takes our advice. And like I said, sometimes he doesn't, but always stay giving advice. Don't stop after the first time you give an advice. Keep going, because you know what? Your advice may be what changes that game or not.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. As far as adjustments go, Coach O's great about allowing, me to give input whenever, just like Coach Remy was talking about. I find it's more effective. We have media timeouts, so rather than when the game's going up and down and everything, if I'm seeing something that I think can be an effective adjustment, I'm probably gonna, unless it's incredibly urgent, I'm probably gonna wait until one of our media timeouts and we actually have 20 or so seconds to actually talk about it for a little bit. As far as charting, so we have a chart that, it looks ridiculous. It's got so much stuff on it, but keeping charts of fouls, individual team on both teams. We really emphasize offensive rebounds. So even though we're getting a stat sheet at the end of every quarter, we're trying to keep up, or I'm trying to keep up with offensive rebounds that we're getting or giving up. And then the other thing that's big for us is open threes that we're getting or open threes that we're giving up. So I'm charting that as well. And then at the bottom of the sheet, we have all of our play sheet that's written at the bottom. So we're also keeping track of, all right, what's working for us offensively. And then there's a column on the right which is how they're scoring. So we're trying to keep up as best as we can as to, how we're scoring and how they're scoring and how we can fix that.
We, Grayson, all have.
Go ahead, Coach Shan.
Sorry. Here have things pretty well designated through for in-game stuff. Like our student assistant, he does the majority of the charting, keeping track of our fouls, the other team's fouls, making us all aware as a staff of who's in foul trouble, what mismatches, or if the other team's in foul trouble, things we kind of take advantage of. And of course, timeouts. Obviously, one of the most important things is knowing, how many timeouts you have, how many the others use, and vice versa, as a strategy really kicks in toward the game type situation. We had myself at one point focused on the rotations, substitutions. Later on, also focused on adjustments, not just at halftime or in game, but when players get subbed out. Talking to them through things that they did well, things that they could correct, what have you. Another one of our assistants, our top assistant, he was focused on matchups. So every time that we got to stop and play, making sure guys were matched up on the guy they were supposed to be on. Well, our head coach was really locked in on, but running our offense. And then, when timeouts come, we need some media timeouts as well. When timeouts come around, taking suggestions or at least listening to them and implementing them as he felt fit. And obviously we always enforce that and try to make sure that guys are locked in. That time in the huddle is so short that, we got to make sure we focus on the head coach's voice being the one that's heard. And then when they leave the huddle and get on the floor, hopefully they're able to transition, what was told to them in that way. So our staff was able to really be able to focus on very specific things in game, and also, again, still being there to help each other out from time to time as needed.
For this one, this year, we actually switched midway through the year. Our other assistant who's there for games is unbelievable with keeping track of stats and fouls and timeouts and keeps us organized. Every once in a while when he goes to NBA All-Star Weekend, I have to do that, and I'm way worse than he is doing it. I always got to go check to make sure I'm keeping the stuff right so we don't have anybody foul out on my watch. We were charting early in the year, and Coach and I spend so much time on the game plan, and it's really what I've enjoyed here, and probably why I've been here for 4 years now. Is it's a complete collaboration. So there was times where I was charting and I was missing stuff, whether we were doing it on offense. I was charting defense stuff because press this year. So we're trying to get a feel for how many 2-on-1 situations we were in the backcourt, coming in to just limit those opportunities. And we stopped doing it about halfway through the year, having me chart, because I was calling the defense each time as coach was calling the offense. So what we were in our press and what we were in the half court. That's one thing we're really narrowing in our focus on this year is what is the most important thing for us to chart, not just to do it just to have a guy with a clipboard. We have a little bit more help that we've recruited this year. So we've not only recruited players, we recruited a manager or two this year to help with some of that stuff. And so you have big staffs, that's great. But for us, it was watching and seeing the game, so I could help coach as much as possible with in-game adjustments, offensively or defensively. So we kind of did a 180 midway through the year.
If I can add, I will say there's a ton of value to those possession charts as well. Would we try to chart what the other team is calling and if they're being efficient with it. That's something that I really would like to put more emphasis on moving forward. Just to it's another way to try to take away what they do well and what they're doing consistently, as well as learn what we're doing well too.
Awesome. Next question. With the pandemic going on, what are some things you think coaches could learn or need to learn that could help them grow kind of in this uncertain time to, maybe be an advantage when we get things back going up again?
I think one of the biggest things that we're doing right now, I don't know about everybody else on the panel. The last couple of years, we've had a lot of turnover. We brought in 6 guys this year to play varsity, 5 freshmen. So actually this time has been great for us in a sense, because we've done Zoom meetings once a week. We've been able to set our standards and our principles pretty early, and it has nothing to do with basketball, just our standards of expectations. And we've done some presentations. Each person on our staff took a Monday to present to our team. And we would have never had that in the past. We only have our guys on campus. They come and work camp for a week. We don't have them for summer school or anything like that, maybe like the Division I's do in some other schools. So normally our guys get there in August and we're introducing ourselves. And now they've worked as teams in some competitions. And Coach and I are getting to know our guys so we can put them in the best position to be successful, because most years they get there in August. We start earlier than anybody in America at NAIA. It feels like we start as soon as they get on campus, but with the 24-week rule, we get going early in September, and it takes us kind of until November to sort of get a feel for what guys are really good at and what they can do. Now, we did that in recruiting this year as well. We saw guys play in person. We didn't take guys from video. We didn't take recommendations a whole lot. We went and saw kids play because you can't miss. You can't miss. For us, we were in AI Division II. Obviously, it's going to 1, but we only had 6 scholarships, so we couldn't miss, which we didn't do a lot, but we did on maybe 1 kid or so that we took advice from. So we're doing that stuff with our team, I guess, to grow and be as prepared as we can, and probably as prepared as we've ever been in August, especially with our young guys.
Yeah, and we're doing similar stuff with the Zoom meeting right now. We're going over the leadership playbook with our returners and the newcomers that we have so far. But I don't know about the rest of you all, Matt and Coach Remy and Coach Shan, but I mean, we're still recruiting big time for the fall. So I mean, this is like a prime time recruiting season for us right now, and April and May are really when we're bringing kids on campus and everything like that, just because the NAIA is a little different. We might get a couple people really, but a lot of our recruiting is done in the spring in terms of like getting people to sign. So one of the things, and I think the question was, what other coaches can do, and I know everybody's at a different stage and everything. I know one of the things that I've kind of left my comfort zone in, and I see where Ethan and Alex and Aaron Sternecker are on this thing, and they're really good at this stuff. But just from a video standpoint, like we're having to get recruits and people that we're talking to, different footage and videos and things to blast out to them, since we can't, bring them to the beach. I mean, that's our big sell, is to bring these kids to the beach who aren't from Florida specifically. So we're having to kind of bring the beach to them virtually. So just trying to learn how to do some video editing and stuff like that. And then, being able to put together those recruiting materials is something that, I've been working on.
Yeah, I
Reid,
certainly am with you on that, Coach. My bad, Coach. Go ahead.
You sure? I was gonna say kind of piggyback off of Reid there. We're huge in recruiting. I think Coach Matthew was saying how he needed to replace 6. I had 12 seniors this past year. So we got to replace basically the whole team. So for us, we recruit until the first week of August, when school starts. So I think obviously we're still deep in recruiting, but at the same time, with this pandemic, I think a lot of times we're working so much during the season. This is definitely a good time that if you get a chance, just kind of take a few days to yourself and just regroup and relax and, do a few things that make you happy. You guys know the grind that we go through during the season. Coach Warren was saying that 24-week rule, when it starts up in about September, we're hard at work from September to March, and then right into recruiting and doing it all over again. So this pandemic has definitely, obviously we're still recruiting and still doing work, but at the same time taking, get a chance to go home a little bit earlier if you are still able to go to the office, but just taking some time to yourself as well.
Indeed, Coach. Recruiting is still going on. It's actually it's full force now. A lot more phone calls and texts, and I can't tell you how many times I've sent out our virtual tour because now that's really all we have to supplement, getting guys on campus, and so they get a chance to at least see what the campus looks like, and we have to find ways to articulate things that they would normally get to experience firsthand. And so it's what this pandemic has really forced us to do is become innovative with, graphics and different things like that. And so one of the ways that I've tried to utilize this time is to learn things that I haven't had to do before in my role. I never had to create a highlight tape. And so it took me much longer than I would have liked to for us to put together a high tape of our season and to, narrow plays down and all that stuff. And, now I'm trying to spend some time breaking down our man-to-man defense from this past year and just really chopping it up into very specific areas that we want to help reinforce through film and action when we come back around and are able to get on the court next year, as well as trying my hand at some Photoshop stuff. The more you can diversify your skill set as an assistant coach, the better prepared you probably will be when you're a head coach, not just to be a head coach, but to then build up your assistant coaches. And so it's one of those things where, I see on Twitter all the time that, as coaches, we'll be able to tell which players were working and who weren't. Well, amongst our staffs, we'll be able to tell, who was investing time and getting better and expanding our content knowledge and what have you, and who wasn't. And we've been all, I'm sure, watching a ton of podcasts, listening to a ton of podcasts and watching a ton of webinars and stuff. And I know our head coach he's got a schedule full of them that he invests in daily. And I've started to really pick very specific areas where I think I can help what we do. I'm not watching them just to watch them. I'm watching the ones that I think that can help what we already want to do to help expand, how efficient I can be for our staff.
Great. Coach Alex has a question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself to ask.
Yeah, this question is for Coach Reid specifically, but also interested in hearing the whole panel's thoughts. What is your roster building philosophy for the NAIA level in terms of taking JUCOs versus high school kids versus D1 or D2 transfers? And then also, how do you strategically go about giving out different scholarship amounts to recruits?
It's a good question. So, our philosophy kind of varies by year and what we need. So if we have a lot of returners coming back, we might take more high schoolers than transfers. We have a mix of both. We pretty much always have a mix of both. I mean, one of the things with us is we're always going to recruit high schoolers. We're always going to try to recruit Florida. That's where we are. So we're always going to try to recruit, especially South Florida, but all of Florida. Now, we've recruited players from all over the place, from Wisconsin, from North Carolina, from Ohio. We've had success recruiting in high school, and I think a lot of people view the NAIA as mostly transfers. Now, there are a lot of transfers too, so we'll have a mix, and especially if we have a need where, let's say we are graduating 2 post players that played the majority of our post minutes, then yeah, we're going to go try to find a transfer to fill that spot so that they can come in and play right away. In terms of how we allocate scholarships, I mean, and I don't know how everybody does it. Matt has touched on that. We had 6 scholarships in the past, and every school is a little different with how they're allowed to allocate everything. We've got to break things up for the most part. So, one of the things with the NAIA is you get to stack scholarships on top of academic money. So if we're getting a 4.0 GPA kid, then they're going to get the highest academic merit scholarship at Kaiser. So we're going to be able to get them closer with our athletic money, and then also whatever they're getting from FAFSA if they're not an international recruit. So yeah, you got to get kind of creative in how you work those numbers. It's almost like a salary cap in a sense that you're working with. So that's fun to work with. But yeah, you definitely got to get creative.
I think to piggyback off what Reid said, I think that's what's very interesting about this is he said they could stack scholarships. We can't stack scholarships at Warner. You either get athletic money or you get academic money. So for us, the whole NAI exemption guys, which a lot of the Midwest schools do that are really, really good, Indiana Wesleyan, St. Francis, all those schools in the Crossroads League are unbelievable, got unbelievable players. We can't do that. So it doesn't really do us a humongous deal to get great academic kids. Now, it's a lot easier to manage good students, and with one assistant coach, or I don't have to chase them to class. So we like to have those guys, but their GPAs are more so what we look at because it's more reflective. The test scores are all over the map, especially on the men's side. I don't think that reflects how smart a kid is. But for us, that's completely different. And like Reid said, it is like a salary cap. And on Tuesday night, the women's coach from Missouri Baptist talked about you got to go give your best players some money. And that's sort of what we've done. We've allocated it to where we try to get 5 or 6 or 7 really, really good players. And then we're filling in the rest of the roster with role players. And I think in the state of Florida, there's a ton of those kids, a ton of them. And everybody emails us saying, well, we've got a great kid for your level, and 90% of them can't play for us. So there's a lot of good players. My first 2 years, we took a lot of transfers. Coach and I really thought long and hard about it. Obviously, the instant gratification's awesome with those guys, but we've had a lot that have been beat up. Our best player had played at 4 schools in 4 years, and he couldn't barely practice after November, which makes it hard to do what we want to do. We do a lot of stuff on offense. We do a lot of stuff on defense. So we went the opposite route with 5 freshmen this year. To answer the last question, we were done recruiting before the pandemic hit. We got our work done early. I probably went to 25 high school games to watch our prime targets play. And we didn't worry about who else was recruiting them. We made them feel special. This is the big time where we're at. We're trying to – there's a few things that we do where we're never going to be number 1 in our league in location. We're probably 10th. We're never going to be number one in our league in facilities. We're probably 10th or 9th, just being honest. So what can we offer that we're the best at? We could have the best gear in the league. We could be the best with social media and graphics in the league. We can have the best staff in the league, which is things that we believe that we do well. So we've went after those guys. And with the transfer portal, it's just so saturated that there's so many good high school players in Florida that no one's recruiting. So that's the route we went. And we've had the freshman of the year league, player of the year in the league 2 years ago, and second in the voting this year. So we felt like we've done pretty well with that. So we've managed it a little bit differently each year. Like Reid said, it's always sort of a influx of what you're going to do. But that's sort of been our strategy.
I think for us here at Central Methodist, it's different. We're kind of like Coach Warren in the fact that we cannot stack scholarships. So it's either, academics or basketball. But as the other point of it too is, we're also almost basically fully funded. So we tried the high school route, and it didn't work for us. A lot of times, especially here in Missouri and in the Midwest, a lot of the high school kids that we want to get, there's so many schools just right around the immediate area that they're gonna go to, a small Division I or a Division II school. So for us, we've done it the transfer way. We had 7 Division I transfers, NCAA Division I transfers on our team this year. So we go out and we try to find transfers. When we do bring high school kids into the mix, a lot of times, for lack of better words, they just don't make it. Obviously with the NAIA going one division this year, you have to bring a few more high school kids that maybe we're accustomed to, but at the same time, we're still going to go out and probably get transfers. Like I said, we graduated 12 kids this year. 2 years ago, we graduated 9. We don't try to build for the future. We're trying to win right now. And that's just kind of like how we've decided to go about it. 2 years ago, we had the NAIA National Player of the Year. And this past year, we had 2 first-team All-Americans, in the NAIA, but that's how we've found it. And at the same time, being able to bring in all those kids, you got to have money to be able to pay them, and our school kind of backs us up, and, we're able to give out full rides, to some of those kids. So.
For us here at Graceland, we, there's a balance too. This is my first year at Graceland, but we had freshmen come in that were straight out of high school. We had some transfers, we had returners, and the balance among that, I think, is critical. I think in our conference, the Heart of America Conference, it's a tough conference, and so if you go out there with all freshmen, you're probably going to take some lumps. Excuse me, like we did this past year. At one point, we had 5, in our rotation. We remember times on the floor where all 4 freshmen were on the floor at the same time, or 4 out of the 5 were on the floor at the same time, and they were learning, trial by error, and we were learning about them, and we were lucky that they worked hard enough to help us, and watching them grow is going to continue to be a lot of fun. Our transfers, we expect them to have an impact right away. We do have, full scholarships available, but not a ton, not as many as some of the other teams in our conference. And so, like Coach said, we can't miss. We cannot miss when we bring those kids in on full scholarship, because we become dependent on each other. And again, that's what coaching is about, right? Using your eyes, trusting your eyes, and making sure your evaluations are accurate. But it's also about networking. And so, we get those emails like everyone else, and people telling us, they've got a steal for us and all sorts of stuff. And then, we evaluate film and what have you. And very rarely is it a steal. So we really have to go out and like Coach said, you've got to be big time where you're at. We refuse to just kind of be content with, it's a tough area, or we're not fully funded. We're going to go on recruit as if we are. We're going to put, all those eggs in the basket for kids that we believe in, instead of, saying that we're a small campus. We'll articulate, that it's, the type of campus where you don't have to leave 15 minutes early just to get to your next class. And so it makes no sense for us to kind of succumb to whatever handicaps we think that we may be under. We work hard to bring in the right kind of kids, high character kids. And if we find them as freshmen, that's great. If they're transfers, that's great. If they're bounce backs, that's great too. But we got to make sure that it's the right fit. Just like we see kids are hoping that they're the right fit for whatever particular level, they've got to be the right fit for our program.
Awesome. Another question in here. With the crazy schedule of the season, how do you find a rhythm in prioritizing your coaching duties with your personal life and the important things outside of basketball?
I can start with that one. I think for me personally, my situation is a little bit different, where my kids live in Arizona. They live in a completely different state. And so, being a part of their lives it's tricky, a whole lot of video chatting and phone calls and what have you. But outside of that, at 40 years old, I don't have a lot of, personal life per se. I'm not looking to go out on the weekends or, hit the clubs or anything like that. Like that stuff is, I did that in undergrad while I was a student assistant. So, I got to experience a lot of that stuff. So really right now I'm locked into this coaching profession. I would advise, younger coaches though, you kind of got to decide what you want to do. And if you really want to commit to coaching, because you may not get a whole lot of, that personal time and what have you. Some of you on the call may be student assistants, and so you're battling, schoolwork with coaching duties and what have you. And being organized is a huge part of that. Again, that's something that I'm constantly working on too, is being essentially, creating my own schedule and then being able to stick to that, because I know that brings the most value out of me. And that's how I can be most efficient for our staff. So, but I would definitely say as a young coach, if you do have other priorities, trying to find some balance is critical. If you have a family, and maybe some of the coaches do, and they'll speak to that, it's definitely tough. Being away from my kids is honestly tough, but I've got a great support system, with them there in Arizona, great support system here with me in Lamoni, and so it all works. It works, and I'm blessed that it does work and allows me to pursue my goals of coaching.
I can follow up on that. I think one of the things that at Warner that is special to me and has been one of the probably biggest reasons that I haven't looked all over the place and elsewhere to move on is Coach Hanrahan has a family and he values that time. We're efficient with what we do. We're not in at 5 a.m. in the morning. We're not there at 11 p.m. at night unless something's gone way wrong and it's necessary. But we're there 8 to 5. We have the best practice time in America. We go 2 to 4 every day. Watch a little film, maybe lift, something like that. And we're out by 5 o'clock. Now I live an hour away, so I drive an hour to work and from work every day, and come home to my fiance. And we just, that's a great release. It's able to focus on other things. And coach gives me a lot of leeway to be able to leave at certain times to get stuff done that I can get done from home. If it's stuff on the computer, we don't just spend time in the office just to spend time in the office, which I value immensely, because you hear the horror stories of people that do. Their boss is calling the office phone at 11:30 at night to make sure they're there. I think some of that stuff is overkill. Don't believe in any of that at all. Especially with all the technology we have now. You can get your work done anywhere. I do it all from my personal computer anyways. I don't use the office computer. So but we have a great balance. So it's been something that's been a blessing for me.
Yeah, I can follow up on that. Pretty much the same. It's going to be busy during the season. We all know that, being in this profession. One of the things that's great about what we have going on is our conference schedule is Thursday and Saturday games. So one of the things that Coach O is huge on is giving Sunday as an off day. So the way with the NAIA, it's 24 weeks. You don't technically have to give a day. You have 24 weeks to work with players however much you want. And so, obviously, the thought process behind Sunday being an off day is it's an off day for our players. They don't have to see us. They don't have to go to class, and the same way for us. So yeah, I mean, just using that time to kind of recharge the batteries and move on to the next week.
Great. Coach Ethan, you have a question? You can go ahead and ask it.
Thanks, Ashton. My question is, as a smaller staff, how do y'all handle the recruiting? Do you guys focus more on going to the big tournaments or focusing on the video that's sent to you? How do y'all manage that with a smaller staff and making sure you're still competing at the highest level?
I can start with this one. For us, I think we go, we always start off the year kind of with, a meeting of coaches and just kind of what we're trying to get accomplished, as far as the whole recruiting aspect of it, and there's a lot of tournaments. And when we go to those tournaments, as you guys all know, not only are we, recruiting against ourselves and against the other teams in our leagues, but we're also recruiting against Division I, Division II coaches that are all there. I think it's big to build your network. A lot of the kids that I've gotten haven't been at a tournament that I've went to. It's through somebody I met. They knew of a kid, they passed along a name, and the name trickled down to me. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on going to tournaments and seeing kids. But going to those JUCO tournaments, realistically, how many of those kids are you actually going to get? You're going to sit there, you're going to watch a lot of games. And maybe you get one or two. But those kids, those same other coaches that are there, they're also to watching them too. So we've kind of got creative here at Central Methodist on how we recruit and and how we try to find kids. But I think networking is big. I reach out to people, coaches that I know that whether they're at the D1 level, D2, NAIA level, that maybe their roster is full, but through that networking, they may send you a kid, hey, I got so and so. We can't take them because maybe they stopped recruiting guards, but we know you're still recruiting. So here's a guard. If you're still looking for one. So that's kind of how we go about it here.
So for us, we kind of have a plan of the kind of areas that we are recruiting high schoolers and then how we're going to see junior college players as well. So and obviously things have changed with, the travel stuff that with the April live period and the July live period, who knows what's going to happen. But so typically, we'll go to all events down here in Florida. And kind of like Coach Remy was saying, part of going to all those events in Florida is not just seeing them. It's talking with the director of the event, the high school coaches, who a lot of times, especially down here in Florida, the high school coaches will also be involved in one of the main travel organizations, whether it be the Miami Suns or FGB or Boca Thunder, and you can name them all. But then in July, our head coach is is from Ohio. So we're always going to try to see Midwest high schoolers. So typically we'll go in July, we'll go to the Run for the Roses event in Louisville, because that gives us a chance to see a lot of Midwest players and a lot of Southeast players. So we know that we're going to see as many of those as we can for the upcoming recruiting class and probably the year after as well. So we'll go to that. And then in the beginning of October, we have our junior college jamboree in Tallahassee that we'll always go to every year just to get a head start on, all right, what junior colleges right here in our backyard have players that we think that we'll be able to see. And then from there, it's during the season, it's high school gyms, high school games in our area, particularly in South Florida. So kind of from Port St. Lucie down through Miami is what we'll focus on during the season, just because we know that we can get done with practice and we can get to one of those gyms. Depending on what time you're going to Miami, it might be tough, but we can get into one of those gyms within an hour of a drive, maybe two, depending on where we're going. So, and then the junior colleges in our areas, we're always going to try to go see games throughout the season, because we've got so many great junior colleges in the state of Florida. And I know, Matt can talk more about that too, because I'm sure that they're doing something similar. But yeah, so that's kind of our plan.
Yeah, to go along with that. So I would say for us, it starts the summer prior to the kid's senior year, and in that spring and the live period. So I'll go, normally Coach and I'll go to an event in April in the early live period. I know they've changed those dates and those situations so many different times. For NAIA, obviously the live period's every day of the entire year, but obviously the tournaments matter during that period, because that's when all the NCAA coaches can go. So we want to identify a list of guys in those periods in April. I normally go, the last 3 years I've went to Atlanta in July, and you get a little bit of everything in the Southeast. But our work starts before we go. We want to have an idea of who we're trying to go see, what teams we're trying to see, what coaches, especially Coach Hand knows, because he's been doing this for 20 years in the state, which guys I know through AAU in different connections. So we're trying to be very systematic. And in the summers, my boss works for the NBA. So for the most part, it's just me going, and then I'll call him like, hey, we got a guy that you're going to have to come take a look at some point. So the summer is really identifying for us and starting to build those relationships. And then through the school year, I'll be on the road, Coach and I'll be on the road to go see them play in high school. And I'd say 95% of the time it's watching how they act with the coach, how they act with their teammates. Do they cheer for their teammates? We know they can play. We're not going to spend time. I mean, I went and recruited 2 kids at Jacksonville, which is a 3-hour trip. I'm not going once a month to figure out if he can play. We know he can play. And that's the biggest thing. That's what coach calls and asks. Did he cheer for his teammates? So we've done that. We do all the junior college stuff as well, as Reid alluded to as well. That Florida is one of the best junior college states in the country. So for us, at least on the men's side, that sort of made it hard for us, because it's almost over recruited by Division I and Division IIs. So we try not to spend too much time on those guys chasing pipe dreams. They've been recruited out of high school, out of junior college. So some of that is just a free trip to Florida, especially for out-of-state guys. So we have to guard against that. And I know Coach Wright talked about it on Tuesday night on the head coaches panel. We're not looking for NAIA players, and he's exactly right. If we recruit NAIA guys, we're going to win 10 games a year. So we need low major guys, and for us, that was high school kids this year in this recruiting class. And really, it doesn't matter the year. We just think they're a good fit. We're a Christian school, so their faith obviously has to be aligned to what we're trying to do as well in that aspect. But if they're a good fit for our program and they check all the boxes, doesn't matter to us whether they play Division I, junior college, high school, took a post-grad kid. So that's sort of what we're doing in that aspect.
For us, we take more of an approach where, we kind of break up regions of the country where, we have roots, where, we have the majority of our connections. Me specifically, I was in charge of recruiting the southwest part of the country, California, Nevada, mostly Arizona. We had another coach who, he coached club ball in Texas, so, San Antonio specifically. So, he focuses on the state of Texas and Louisiana, what have you. Another coach focused on the Midwest because this is where he's from. And then, of course, obviously our head coach supersedes pretty much everything, and we run everything through him. But we get to really lock in on the best guys within that region and try to build those relationships with the players, their families, and of course their coaches, AAU coaches, high school coaches, sometimes trainers. But it really, I think, comes down to the genuine relationships you're able to establish with the players and those that matter to them, and then becoming somebody that matters to them, especially if you end up getting to coach them at your particular school. And so, that saying can't be more true, coach, in that, you don't win games recruiting at your level. You've got to land a couple big fish every now and then, and guys that that technically are a steal, for your level, whatever have you. But we don't downplay it either. There's tremendous basketball, as we all know, at the NAIA level, and we saw. I think this year might have been the most NAIA teams that have beaten Division I and Division II teams in those exhibition games, those guarantee games. It seemed like they were popping up once every couple of days on Twitter this season. So we're having success against a lot of teams. There's way more parity now than there probably was 10, 20 years ago amongst the levels, and I think that's also can be a selling point for for conferences that are really good and teams that are at the top of that conference or climbing their way up. But we get to focus. And someone else asked if we recruit nationally. We're in a position where we can recruit nationally and to some degree internationally. Depending on obviously how good a kid is. That makes the world a difference. And we also have to fill a JV team. So we try to take care of home first. We want to focus on the state of Iowa, and see if our reach is within 3 to 5 hours, anywhere from there. That way we can get into Chicago hopefully and things like that, and really just try to again focus on guys that are a right fit academically, character-wise, and of course making sure that they can produce on the court.
Awesome. So does anybody else have any questions? If you do, just feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it to everybody.
I have a question. Sean Hanrahan. I get the joy of having Matt Warren coach our team as the associate head coach, and I get all the wins. Thank you, Matt. My question is—
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. And I was going to call as Bob Williams from my daughter's phone and mess with him, but I'm not going to do that. This is great, by the way, Ashton. Good job, both you and Connor.
Thank you.
So, yeah, here's my question. What's the worst thing you've done as an assistant?
That's for me.
Well, I mean, I know all the worst things, most of them, but you can go ahead if you want.
I would also like Coach Remy to answer that one.
Yeah, we all want to know. Everybody. We want to know everybody's story.
I got one right off the bat. This is just the first one that comes to my mind. I've got plenty, so I can think of more as the others answer. But so this year we played in a Thanksgiving Classic, and this is talking about duties other than basketball too. So we played in a Thanksgiving Classic in San Antonio, and I was in charge of the scheduling for that and all the lead up and the emails and everything that led up to it. And we get to San Antonio, we're playing 2 games. Well, we're the home team for one game and the road team for the other. I failed to check in on that info, and we only brought one set of uniforms, the road uniforms. Yeah, everybody can get a good laugh at that. But so we didn't realize it until we're practicing the day before at Our Lady of the Lake, who is hosting the event. And we walk in the gym and see, that we're the home team for one of those games. And I look at it and I think, oh, Jesus. I just completely dropped the ball on that. So we have to, I didn't even realize all the rules that go into that too. If you're not wearing the right uniforms, I mean, there's technicals involved. In fact, I think there's 2 at the beginning of the game. So I'm thinking, we're going to cost ourselves a chance, or I'm going to cost ourselves a chance at winning the game. So luckily we were able to wear our road uniforms, and the second team that we played when we were supposed to be the home team worked with us on that. But yeah, that one was pretty bad. I was in the doghouse for a little bit on that one.
I'll go ahead quickly while I got it on my mind, since my boss asked the question. I think it was after I dunked on one of our guys at his house with the hoop on like 6.5, because, I'm not getting off the ground. And I cussed in front of his kids. And then eventually, like the next week, I was like, hey, I may have said a bad word in front of your kids who are in middle school and elementary school. So I think that's the worst one that comes to mind.
Coach Remy might have a good story that everyone's waiting to hear, so I'll just chime in really quickly. I can't say that, I'm not perfect by far. And obviously none of us are, but I do know, and I won't say it's the worst thing I've ever done as an assistant coach. It's something I've learned. I know that working for coaches that you have a relationship with is huge. So I probably, if I'm looking for another job somewhere at some point, I probably won't work for a coach that I don't know personally, that we don't have a relationship together, because it can go either way. It really can. I don't know if anyone has experienced that, but it can go great where you guys click, or it can go the opposite. So that's something that I've learned. I would say twofold is what Coach Remy mentioned earlier, is I think the worst thing you can do as an assistant coach is not let your voice be heard. Just because maybe one suggestion wasn't utilized, don't stop offering suggestions, because it can have an impact. And don't get defensive about it. Your head coach is not, being condescending or whatever have you. I would hope. I know ours isn't, if he doesn't use your suggestion. It's simply, he feels in his gut that this is what we're going to do in that point in time, and it's our job as assistants, whether we agree with it or not, to help reinforce it. And so, the next time around a certain situation comes up, you're able to say, hey, well, I think we should go to zone for this particular reason, because, the best 2 shooters are off the court, whatever have you. Don't not say that simply because the previous suggestion you made wasn't utilized.
I think as far as like the worst thing I've done, obviously everybody tries to be as professional as possible. I was ordering food for our team, and we're ordering Pizza Hut, and I happened to call the wrong Pizza Hut. So I ordered this whole menu. I got it going, and there was a Pizza Hut still in Columbia, Missouri, not near where we were playing at. So we had a whole order. I paid for it and everything, so my boss was not very happy with me. We had to figure out, that they had to make all that food. So we still had to pay them some money, but they were able to, cut us half. And still, he wasn't happy because now the girls were in the gym with no food. So we all had to go down and, get a quick bite to eat somewhere.
Anybody else have a question? No? All right. Well, last question can be for all 4 of you. If you could go back to the start of your coaching career, what is something you would have told your younger self?
I'll just, I'll take this one for myself, because this is something, I'm glad you asked this question that I actually think about a lot, and if I could go back, I would have started this journey sooner. I look at some of the younger coaches that we have in this business, graduating at 22, and whether it's being a GA or getting right into the business, like someone like yourself, Ashton, when you're about 23, 24, you're going to have a pretty darn good job, whereas, myself, I kind of went the back way, chased the dream of sports for a while, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and graduated with a master's at, as a grad assistant, at 26, and then kind of really started getting into it. So definitely what I'll say is if you think you want to be in coaching, try to get into it early, and build from there, start marketing yourself. And I think somebody asked the question, if you want to get into coaching, certain things you should do. For me, do internships, be in calls like this, start learning, start reaching out to coaches. If you can go out and maybe you're still playing or you're still going to school, but if you can go out and watch a practice, build a relationship with the local coaches, the high school coaches around your area, maybe at smaller schools there, and start building off slow and then gradually get better from there. But I know for me, if I could go back, man, I would have started this journey a lot sooner. But I wouldn't take anything from the journey I've had.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Coach Remy had said, I think one of the things is, and I know, we're doing all this Zoom stuff because of a pandemic. And again, I don't think I've got a chance to thank you, Ashton and Connor, for putting this together. But, doing more things like this where you're not just waiting for the convention for the Final Four and doing stuff more during the year and reaching out and networking. But one of the pieces of advice I got from a just basketball standpoint that has stuck with me that I think has been huge is in regards to recruiting is make sure that you're recruiting players that your head coach can coach or wants to coach. Because I think so many times we see something in somebody that we get fixated on, like just throwing out an example, it could be their athleticism. Well, if you know that based on what you're seeing that their personality is not going to mesh, then it doesn't matter how much you like that player. It matters if your head coach can coach that player. So that's something that I got a piece of advice when I was just starting in, and it's something that I think has really helped me.
Remy, Reid.
I would tell my younger self to definitely take the risk. And what I mean by that is I'm from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised, went to college, JUCO and undergrad in New York. That's where basically I started my coaching career. And I was, at a pivotal stage when after I was done being a student assistant, I got hired at the D3 school that I graduated from. So I was still really in my comfort zone. I had an opportunity to move across the country to pursue some different things. And I was really worried about doing that. I didn't know if, the experience that I had would, help me get a job, in a whole new state. I didn't know anyone there for the most part, what have you. And a good friend of mine told me that no matter where you are, the experiences that you've had travel with you. And that, essentially triggered me. And I made that move to Arizona. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life. Earned my master's degree in Arizona, started a family, had my beautiful kids, developed, my coaching career further, became a head coach at the high school level, got back to the JUCO level. And so it was not easy for me to then take another risk, moving all the way to Georgia. That's across the country again, and leaving my kids essentially behind, and my mom and siblings, what have you, in Arizona, for what seemed to be a better opportunity. But take the risk. And then again, moving, back to Arizona and now to Iowa. It's worth it. Obviously, they're calculated risks. You want to try to continue to advance in your career. And I think I've been able to do that and be very blessed with, coaching at pretty much every level except the NCAA Division I level, and being able to recruit almost every region of the country I think, except for, physically, except for the Pacific Northwest. So I think I've made good choices, but I may have not have made those had I not been, I guess, convinced in a sense to take that initial risk, take that jump, and push myself out there.
I think what I would tell myself starting out is to embrace where your feet are planted. I think I've learned that, and that's something that our head coach at North Florida, Coach Driscoll, says all the time. And really, you hear it, but are you really doing that on a daily basis? And like I said earlier, I made Warner the big time, and Coach gives me great responsibility, but also freedom to do stuff with graphic design, with Illustrator, to be creative in what we do. And I think in my other places, did I do the best I could? Yeah, but I think I was always scrolling through hoop dirt, looking for the next job. And it's something that even when I go up and I sit up there now in the office, and Coach Driscoll's been doing it a long time, he always just says, people will notice what you're doing. They'll find you. Just do the best you can at your spot, at your place. And I think that's why really I've enjoyed my 4 years going into year 4 here at Warner. And I don't have my eyes on moving. If something comes along and that's it, and it's right for me and my fiance, then that'll be it. But we're making the big time where we're at. We're playing college basketball, coaching college basketball, trying to get to the national tournament, and just trying to get better every single day. And it's probably something that you think about and you write down when you're listening to these things. But are you practicing it on a daily basis? And I would say I probably am still getting better at doing that, but doing it a lot better now than I did when I was 19 years old or when I was 22 years old. And it's a hard thing to do because you're always thinking like, oh, the flashy new job, or I deserve to move up, or whatever. Well, there's a lot of guys in this business that deserve to do it. So you're just doing the best job at your place. And at the end of the day, we're trying to win as many games as possible. So I try to help Coach Hand continue to do that.
I think one thing I want to just add at the end here is if you're going to get into this business, make sure you're making the move wholeheartedly. Your first couple jobs, it's probably not going to pay much, but what you're going to learn and the experience you're going to gain and how rewarding it's going to be, that's what's important. And I think Coach Warren and Coach Shan talked about it there. Be 2 feet in. Don't be, always, hey, what's the next thing? I'm here, at Central Methodist, my head coach always, hey, go, hey, look for this job, or he's always marketing me out, and I think that's, that's just a great to have, having a head coach. Once the head coach starts to see that worth in you and the work that you're putting in and day out, trust me, though they may want you there, they're also going to push you out to, to go be your own coach and go be your own boss. So I think when you get into it, don't look at, how much money's on that dotted line, be 2 feet in with it and take it for what it's worth and go with it, and I think we've all made sacrifices, and some of us are continuing to make sacrifices, but trust me, those sacrifices are going to land you and put you in a position to be successful in this business.
Yeah, I'll add one last thing. The best chance you got to go from an assistant coach to a head coach is at your own university. We were listening on a Zoom call the other day, my boss and I, and it's with a guy that consults for getting guys head coaching jobs. So can you get the job where you're at? And I think that helps do your job on a daily basis to try to become the head coach. And I'm not trying to plant stuff on coach and get him fired, but I hope he moves on so I can be the head coach at Warner. And can you get the job where you're at is something I've heard throughout these things that I think has really stuck with me and really resonates. That's your best chance with your athletic director, with your president, with your academic staff. You know them the best than blindly walking in somewhere. So I think that's the last nugget.
I actually have a statement. I don't have a question. Been in Division I for 11 years. Was with Matt when he was manager at University of North Florida. I was director of operations there, assistant coach. Moved on to JMU. Was associate head coach, and I absolutely want to say this, and you guys need to hear this from somebody that's only worked in Division I. It doesn't matter what level that you're on. Basketball is basketball, and please understand, like, you guys are good coaches too. Just don't think because you're at NAIA or Division II or whatever junior college that you're not a good coach. Basketball is basketball, and whatever you put into those kids, you will get out of them. So I just want to encourage everybody to, stay confident in your abilities and keep learning and keep pushing.
Thank you for adding that, Coach Taylor. Those were all fantastic responses. I just want to say thank you again to the 4 coaches on our panel that took time out of their day to speak with us and share their insight. Just want to plug in Rising Coaches who sponsored this event. They're a great asset for all coaches, current and aspiring coaches. So just thank you for joining tonight, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. And